People seeing a possible alien invasion and celebrating and being happy is the definition of America in 2018. Dyze in your house. Exclusively on East Coast Radio. A 1,000-mile journey begins with one step. Progressives took that step on November 6th. The journey's not over, but we took a step in the right direction.
If you don't know what Staten Island is, it's like New York's abortion that lived.
Did you see New York 11 elected a Democrat? New York 11 is Staten Island, the most Trumpian place in New York City. Elected a Democrat. Don't try to tell me it wasn't a wave. Robert Mueller isn't the only person investigating Trump now. We have the House Intel Committee is now chaired by Adam Schiff, and they have subpoena power. And he will use it. And he will get to the bottom of this, like he's been trying to do for the last 2 years, and Devin Nunes has been stymieing him. Devin Nunes is no longer the chairman. The midnight runs to the White House are over. I made a promise to the listeners of East Coast Radio that if the Democrats did not mess up November, that if November 6th went our way, that we would have a little fun here on East Coast Radio. And if you stay tuned, I promise you this. Along with our fighting fascism and trying to save democracy, we will have a little fun. Because we earned it. Keep it locked to East Coast Radio.
Representing Staten Island.
Remember, we got Dyze in your house at the end of the week. We got the J Parks podcast at the beginning of the week. Every week, East Coast Radio for the least heard voices. Get us on Patreon, patreon.com/JParks, and follow us on Twitter at East Coast Radio. Let's punch fascism in the face, one podcast at a time.
If you don't know what Staten Island is, it's like New York's abortion that lived. Representing Staten Island. Staten Island was no joke.
Hey yo, who's in the house? Dyze in your house. What is the word, peeps? What goes on? It is Friday. It is the last Friday of 2018, and we are back here on East Coast Radio with another action-packed edition of Dyze in your house. Probably wondering what Dyze in your house is. I've told you every day, every episode this year. No reason not to tell you this episode. Dyze in your house is a mini podcast which serves as a conduit between each episode of the J Parks podcast, which drops Mondays. It's Sunday at midnight, which is Monday. So, the J Parks podcast is a long-form podcast, and here on East Coast Radio, what we do is we fight fascism one podcast at a time. That's what we try to do. And Alexa, what's fascism?
The noun fascism is usually defined as a governmental system led by a dictator having complete power, forcibly suppressing opposition and criticism, regimenting all industry, commerce, etc., and emphasizing an aggressive nationalism and often racism.
Do you see that was basically America 2018 in a nutshell? That's what your leader, that's what the leader of the free nation is. He's a fascist. And we here on East Coast Radio fight fascism, one podcast at a time. Dyze in your house at the end of the week, J Parks podcast at the beginning of the week. None of that is going to change in 2019. We might add a podcast. Because as we lose friends, as all of my friends who have stuck with me through all of my trials and tribulations over my life, and trust me, in my young life, I've had some trials, I've had some tribulations. That is definitely an accurate assessment of my life. But through all of it, through thick and thin, the people that stood by me through the hardest times have decided that where they draw the line is me being a liberal. That's right. Because I'm a proud Democrat, I have lost all of my, people who were my close friends growing up or in the last 5 years. I'm not really a people person anyway. There's very few people that I let into my life. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm just, for lack of a better term, I'm a dick sometimes. That's how I am. I'm just like that a little bit. I try to make up for it by voting Democrat and, caring about people, caring about others, not scumming people over. That's what I just see. Me being liberal hasn't scummed any of my old friends over. So I don't know why people would leave my side. The support system for the Jay Porks podcast in general dropped significantly in 2018. And that's crazy. It's sad too. It's sad because sometimes people alright, could I just give you guys a little, you guys want a little taste of reality with Least Coast Radio and Dyze in your house? Cause I will. I'll tell you. It wasn't my idea to start a podcast. True story. Back in 2013, I was on my friend's podcast. I was on the Andy Dare Show. And then after being on that show, he asked me if I would like, because he had me on to talk about the Meat Puppets, because I do their social media sometimes. He had me on, and then he contacted me later and said, yo, I would like for you to have a podcast. You should do a podcast. You can have it on my podcast network. And, I'll put it out every week. Just send me the recordings, whatever, and I'll, add the intro and whatnot. Cool. Now, Andy's life got a little busy. So in 2018 wasn't the biggest year for the Jay Porks podcast because it was over on the Dare Network, and we had to move it over to Least Coast Radio for the Least Heard Voices, where we fight fascism one podcast at a time. But the thing is that I understand, listen, Andy now runs a record store, which is, by the way, if you know Andy, you know that's, his ultimate, that's probably his dream job. He's got so many albums in his house. He basically has a record store in his house. Not all vinyl, but you know what I mean? He's got so much music. He listens to so much music. Being a guy that runs a record store, is, cool. I'm happy for him because I know that's his dream. That's if you found out that I got a job at a pot store. You would be like, oh man, Jay's living his dream. It would be. That would be it. But at the same time, that takes up a lot of time. And also, when you're doing that, and then maybe, somebody like me can be a little too liberal. Because let's face it, he's got a record store. He's a smart guy. But Andy's from Middle America. And maybe my liberal rants, were a little too much, to be taking time out of your day running a record store to, air quotes, produce the Jay Porks podcast. I air quotes it because there's really no production needed. I record it and I email it. So I somehow figured out a way to do that myself on my own channel, Least Coast Radio, so I can have a vehicle in which to have the Jay Porks podcast go out when Andy's having a busy week or whatever and he can't do it. Cool, that's fine. So I noticed that, I think Andy told me in September, he said, I'm not going to be able to produce your podcast anymore until at least July. Not July, I'm sorry, I misspoke. He said, it was September, and he said, I'm not going to be able to put one out till at least October. I said, alright, cool. No texts. No nothing. So, what I do, I just start putting the J Parks podcast exclusively on Least Coast Radio for the least heard voices. Because listen, if I'm too liberal for somebody, if this is too much, if being on the right side of history is too much, then I don't want to be anything. That's just how I feel. And I have family members too. I have family members who, like, I have no interest in contacting. Like, I had to call my uncle for my birthday because my mom, like, made me do it, and it's a brother, but, like, he's like this Trump asshole, like the ultimate Trump asshole, like an uneducated one. Like, he's not somebody that's like, I'm a Republican, I'm just gonna hold my nose and vote for Trump. No. This guy is all about Trump all the time. If Trump was a dildo, he'd put it up his ass. And I'm not saying that all people that vote for Trump like sodomy, but I'm saying that this is the one uncle I have who's gay. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I just hate that he supports Trump. I just hate that he supports a fascist agenda. So, like, I had to, like, call him on my birthday, which was December 16th. By the way, thanks everyone who reached out to me for my birthday. I appreciate that. Also, to the people that didn't, screw you and die. Just, I'm going to put that out there because, if I'm anything, I'm always the guy that texts people on their birthday at 12:02. I wasn't asked, all I could have is some recognition. As you can tell, I'm a little bitter. Okay, it's been a long year. And I think some of this anger and resentment is coming from yesterday when I spent 3.5 hours on a bolt bus from Cherry Hill to Manhattan, which is like a 90-minute drive, because a bus broke down inside the Lincoln Tunnel going into Manhattan, and we sat parked 50 feet from the tunnel for over an hour and a half. So maybe I still have some anger and resentment in me, or maybe I'm looking around and I'm seeing fascism rising and rising. And what do I also see? I hear me talking about it, and I see my friends dissipating away from me. My support system is going away. Now, are they sick of me, or are they uneducated? Or are they both? I don't know. But the fact of the matter is this. At the end of the day, all of these people that flew from the nest of J Porks are going to have to come back. They're going to have to come back to the tree. And they're going to have to look up and they're going to say, Jay, you know what? You were right. That fascism shit got pretty crazy. And I'm sorry that I was a dick to you about it. And you know what? I'll take those apologies in writing. And I will play them on Dyze in Your House. It will be a new section of the podcast. You can do that for me. Because until I get apologies from all the people that drop me like a bad habit, drop me like cigarettes in 2001, I don't know, I just feel like that was the year that really people stopped smoking cigarettes. Drop me like a bad habit, it's all good. It's fine. Because you know what? My Twitter is more poppin' than ever. Wanna know why? Because I got liberal Twitter. That's right. We use the hashtags, when we watch a Morning Joe, we'll complain about liberal shit, and people will be liking my tweets. Like, for instance, I had a tweet this morning that there's a Gallup poll that 75% of Americans believe that immigration's a good thing for the country. That's fascinating. Then why are we locking children in essentially concentration camps down at the border over Christmas? Do you know that the Border Patrol let a kid die in their care? In their custody, a child died on December 25th. If that kid was in Roman custody, what would we call this? Christmas 2? Return of the Presents? The Presents Strike Back? I wasn't sure which Star Wars to go with. Killed a kid. And Christian Nielsen has the nerve to say, maybe he's got the flu. He didn't have good medical care before they came here. Now that's a funny thing to say, considering the fact that coming from countries like Honduras, Guatemala, countries that, pillage and rape their own people, and slaughter children, and slaughter women, and behead people, mass rape in the streets, mass famage, you know? I doubt that they have universal health care down there. I doubt that their kids are getting the best health care down there. Or maybe, wait for it, maybe they wouldn't be trekking 3,000 fucking miles to America. That's a long walk. And ask anybody who knows me, I love getting my steps in. I walk to the store, I walk somewhere every day. Because right now, actually, it's December 28th. I'm averaging 2.3 miles a day walking for the year. And I'm trying to keep that average of I'm trying to keep it 2.2 for December, because the last couple of months I was under 2 miles a day, and that really pissed me off because it was like 1.8 and then it was 1.9, and that got me tight. I'm a guy that loves getting my steps in. I love it to death. I'm not walking 3,000 miles. Now, no way. Not ever. I'm not walking down Mr. Walkway, walk down me. I'm not doing it. I am lazy. I'd rather be raped and pillaged than walk 3,000 miles. Let's keep it real. Let's keep it real. Sodomy doesn't hurt for that long, so I've heard. Anyhow, these people making the trek, and all they hear, you know, they get to the border patrol, they get to the border, and instead of, you know, going through the asylum process like, you know, is supposed to happen here in America, because that's what this country is. It's an asylum country, because when we came here, there were already Native Americans here, and the Native Americans were like, yo, the fuck you doing here, bro? And we were like, oh man, we gotta escape these guys, you know, and their taxes and stuff. Okay, cool, we'll let you hang. Oh wait, that was a mistake. Now they won't even let the Indians vote. Native Americans. See that? Must have been hanging around too many Republicans this week, because I called them Indians instead of Native Americans. The Native Americans in North Dakota couldn't even vote, and that's what cost Heidi Heitkamp the Senate seat. But you know, we're not gonna let some Mexicans. They're not even Mexicans. Hello, the Mexicans at the border. They're not Mexicans. Not every brown Spanish person is Mexican. Not every Spanish person in New York City is Puerto Rican. And not every Spanish person in Miami is Dominican. That's not how this works. It's amazing to me, the amount. Like, anybody who is a Republican is not from here. There is no people who are, quote, from here. There is no here. Unless you are a Native American. Unless you have a name like Running Wolf. Something like that. Unless you've been on a, you know, unless you live on a reservation, you are not from here. You're from somewhere else. My origin story? My family, my grandparents on my father's side are from Poland. They spent their young lives, you know, a portion of it, in concentration camps. You know, much like, you know, sort of like the people at the border, except, you know, they were being gassed and stuff. And a tyrannical leader named Hitler killed most of my family. Killed them. So don't tell me that can't happen here, because we're already seeing signs of it. Already seeing signs of it. We're locking kids in cages. Kids are dying and we're not taking responsibility for it. We don't have doctors down there? Why don't we just take like 100 yards of the other side of the border and set up some sort of medical for Doctors Without Borders thing? I don't understand why we're not helping these people. Why we're not helping these people and maybe finding them things to do, like work. Instead, you're letting people sit at the border and you're tear gassing them. For what? You send troops down there, what? To lay down chicken wire? I didn't know they signed up for carpentry. Putting up fences, drinking out of cups. You kidding me? The troops spend Christmas at the border? I know the weather's nice, but not in those uniforms, it's not. And literally the army, members of the army can't do anything. They can't touch the people. They can't put their hands on anybody at the border. So technically them being there is just one big clusterfuck. Which is probably why Mattis is out, because Mattis probably told the Pentagon, like, we can't keep these guys here. There's nothing they can do. The last adult in the room is out. I had an Aunt Brunya who did not have her numbers that were tattooed on her arm in concentration camp. She did not have them removed because she wanted to always have a constant reminder to tell people, this is what happens when you stop paying attention. This is what happens when populism happens. This is what happens when extremism gets to power. And right now, extremism is in power. But, you know, as liberals, we did our job in November. We voted, and we got a new House of Representatives coming January 3rd. And, you know, we got some investigations, and Trump's going to be held accountable. People are going to be subpoenaed, and we're going to get answers to the questions. Yes. Yes, we are. And we're also going to reopen the government. And we're also going to govern like adults. Because, in all honesty, adults are the ones that get elected, not children. And for this baby who's scared to go to a war zone, did you see his first trip to an active war zone? You see the jacket? You see the jacket? You guys know why the jacket was that puffy, right? Because the reason why Trump doesn't go to war zones is because he's scared. He's scared they might kill him. Here's the thing. Like, you can't send people to war and take people away from... Like, you can't send troops and pull troops, but be scared to go see the troops. Because, oh, I don't want to get killed. His jacket was, like, probably made out of Kevlar. What a fucking pussy. Seriously. In all honesty, you know, say whatever you want about Trump. You know, you can pretend that you think he's a big businessman or whatever. He runs his business well. That's not the case. That's never been the case. That's never been a thing. That's actually been a thing. And the Mark Burnett, the Apprentice, people who worked on The Apprentice came out with an article earlier today or yesterday, and it was talking about how they really had to like you know how like Joe Scarborough says that Trump was always in on the joke, like, you know, Trump water, it's the best, wink, like, you know, like knowing, you know, it sucks, but, you know, I'm putting my name on it, I'm saying it's good. Well, The Apprentice, they like the editing, they had to edit him so hard to make him look like he was something. The dude is a nothing. And anybody from New York knows this. And that's why when I was down in South Jersey, my girlfriend's cousin's, this guy Abe, his name's not Abe. I just know he's got a 3-letter name that I can't remember. He was telling me, he's like, listen, anybody from New York, you're from New York, you know the guy's a con, he's a fraud. I'm like, yeah, I know that. I of course know that. And now, when Democrats get the gavels January 3rd, we're going to investigate the fuck out of this guy. And we're going to bring light. Again, like I said at the beginning, sunlight is the best disinfectant. And we are going to bring light to all of these things. Don Jr., you lied to Congress. That's a felony. You should go to jail. Jared Kushner, you lied to Congress. That's a felony. You should go to jail. Was Michael Cohen in Prague? We don't know. He's already pleaded guilty. He's already going to jail for 3 years. But for some reason, he's tweeting. What is with I'm calling it Papadopoulos syndrome. When you find out you're going to jail, you start tweeting up a storm. I don't know what it is, but we have a lot of stuff to cover. And we are going to cover it all on a late Sunday, early Monday edition of the J Porks podcast, exclusively on Least Coast Radio for the least heard voices. J Porks, Dyze in your house. Alexa, what is fascism?
The noun fascism is usually defined as a governmental system led by a dictator having complete power, forcibly suppressing opposition and criticism, regimenting all industry, commerce, etc., and emphasizing an aggressive nationalism and often racism.
Here on Least Coast Radio, we fight fascism, one podcast at a time. Late.